Hello, welcome to lesson 16.2. In the previous lesson we looked at operators and operands in assembly language programs. In this lesson we'll dig a little bit more deeply and look at the different types of operand and the different ways of addressing memory locations. There are four ways of referring to data in an assembly language command. These are called direct addressing, immediate addressing, indirect addressing, and indexed addressing. I'm going to quickly review each one of these. Remember that in assembly language, each command typically consists of an operator and an operand. The operator is the action and the operand is the data. Of course, there are some commands like halt that don't need operands, but the general principle applies. So the operand means the data that is used in the command. There are four different ways of putting data into a command in assembly language. This slide briefly goes through all four of them, and then I'll look a little bit more detailed at each one. Firstly, immediate addressing. In this case, we just put the data into the command. Direct addressing means we put the memory location of the data into the command. You're probably familiar with that. That's what we do in LMC. In indirect addressing, the memory location doesn't include the data, it includes a pointer to somewhere else in memory where the data is stored. And in indexed addressing, we give the index number within an overall array. So let's go through these four types of addressing, looking at them a little bit more deeply. As I've just said, in immediate addressing, you put the actual data value inside the command instead of referring to a memory location at all. We would only use this method if we are certain that the number will not change. We might say the number is hard-coded, and the implication is that if we need to change the number, we would have to actually go in and edit the command itself. Direct addressing is the method that we have used before as we wrote LMC programs. Following the operator, we give the operand in the form of a memory location where the data is stored, or we can label that memory location and use the label instead. Indirect addressing is a little bit more complicated. We give a memory address, but when the computer goes to that memory address, it doesn't hold the data. It holds a second pointer that points to somewhere else in the computer's memory. So it's two jumps to get to the data. This might seem a little bit more fiddly, but it does have some advantages. It means that the data can be stored in a completely different part of the computer from the program itself. And it means that the program can be adapted to work with different blocks of data. When we use global variables, for example, a procedure or function has access to the original data stored elsewhere in the program. Passing by reference works like this as well. And finally, you're used to working with arrays. Well, if we want to use an array in an assembly language program, we use something called indexed addressing. The computer knows where the array of data is, and therefore instead of giving the computer a complete memory location, we just give it an index number and it uses that value within the overall array. And we can also use it if we're working with lists and tuples and so on. Okay, so I've talked about four different types of addressing. How can you tell which type you're using? Well, if you're using LMC, it's easy because we always use direct addressing, the other kinds we just don't use in LMC. It might come up in the exam, and what we sometimes see is in other assembly languages there are symbols which are included, and the symbol tells you which type of addressing to use. The exact symbol will vary between different assembly languages, so you don't have to learn these. So here's a written activity for you. An assembly language program, not LMC, but some other assembly language program, has the command add 5. What are the different meanings that could have for each type of addressing? So once again, to test your ability, pause this presentation, write down the different answers, write down the type of addressing and the meaning of the command. And then I'll continue in a couple of moments. So pause the presentation. Okay, so here's the answers that you might have written. If you're using immediate addressing, then add 5 would mean add the number 5 to the accumulator. Direct addressing would be add the number at data location 5. Indirect addressing would be follow the pointer at location 5 to find the data. And indexed addressing, it would mean use the value at element 5 of a given data array. So if you got that, it means you understand addressing. If you didn't get all that, go back and have a look and see if you can remember it better next time.